G'day, I'm Mark Hoth and welcome to Swift Almanac. So you want to be a Swift and iOS developer? This short series of tutorials will tell you everything you need to know about setting up your environment before you start coding. We're going to cover setting up your computer with the software that's needed. We're talking about third-party accounts and subscriptions that you want to have access to. And we're going to cover some basic concepts that you need to be aware of prior to writing your first line of code. So first things first, let's get a developer account. Okay, so you want to become a Swift developer, and so the first thing you'll need to do is create an Apple ID. With the Apple ID, you'll be able to enroll in the Apple developer plan, and that gives you access to some exciting things, but the main thing it gives you access to is the App Store, so that once you've completed your app, you can upload it and people can download it and use it on their iPhones. But before I get on to creating the Apple ID, I just thought I'd talk about briefly what you need for a development environment and what your core considerations are if you're going to be buying a new computer now or in the future for your development. So the good news is you can pretty much use the computer you've got or the Mac that you've got in order to do some Xcode development. The computer that I use is an iMac from 2011, so it's 6 years old. It's got a processor of 2.5 gigahertz and it's an i5, and I've got 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is running at 1333 megahertz, and it's DDD3, and I've got a 500 gig regular hard drive, so no SSD or Fusion drive here. So you'll notice in a couple of future tutorials that the speed is not ideal, but at some stage in the future I'll upgrade to a faster computer. So what would you consider if you're going to buy a new computer? Well, the first thing you need to consider is the hard drive speed, because you need to get the files and save compiled files to the drive. And so basically what you need, or what you want if you can afford it, is a Fusion drive, and configure that with the largest SSD components or partition that you can, because that'll keep everything in memory for you. The next thing you want to consider is the speed of the memory, and again, the faster the memory, the better off you'll be. But most importantly is the amount of RAM that you have. And as I said, I've only got 16 gigabytes, and my compiler is paging files definitely, so you want at least 32 gigabytes or 64 gigabytes if you've got a large project. And finally, the processor speed. The processor speed is very important because that's what determines how fast the compile goes. It's the bottleneck. So the faster your compiler, the less downtime you're going to have while you're compiling your projects. The other thing you might want to consider as you become a more experienced developer is the screen size. Some people like to have two screens so that they can work on one and compile and debug on the other, just to make things nice and neat. And other people like one large screen, so a 27-inch screen. Predominantly, I've always only used one 21.5-inch screen, and I find that is sufficient. The times I have used larger screens, I find that I'm continuously mousing to get from one side to the other side, and the same's true with dual screens. When you're moving from one screen to the other with the mouse, it can take some time, but if you keep idle content on the second screen, then you might not have that issue. So the main consideration that you need to think about if you're buying a new computer, or when you buy a new computer, is the compile time. So you aren't productive at all while your project is compiling. So to compile fast, you need a fast processor, and you need enough RAM so the whole application is in memory and you aren't hitting a swap drive. So 32 or 64 gigabytes of RAM minimum, and the fastest processor you can afford. Okay, so let's talk about getting our developer ID or our Apple ID. Firstly, you go to the Apple developer website, which is simply developer.apple.com, and in the top right hand corner here you'll see an account menu. So you click on account, and click here to create an Apple ID. Then you go through and enter your details. I am in Australia. And even though I'm in Australia, it still gives me month, day, year for my birthday. So let's, oops, I wish I was born in the 2000s. Okay, now you're going to be creating an Apple ID, and what you want to consider here is the email address. You're going to be signing up to 3 or 4, maybe even 5 or 6 development sites, and all of those are going to ask for your email address, and potentially you could be getting emails and reminders and all kinds of things from these email addresses. You may want to consider creating a new email address specific for development. Maybe not so much of an issue if you are working for a company, but privately you might not want to be getting development emails from various sites sent to the same email address that you get emails from, or your friends and family, etc. So just think about that and bear that in mind. So let's create an email address. And enter some passwords. Now these security questions, some of these are good questions, some of these are bad questions. The first time you did something is always a good question because it's historical. So in fact all of these are good questions. The first time you flew on a plane, let's say I went to San Francisco. Second lot of security questions. What is your dream job? This is an example of a bad question because it's something that could happen in the future and therefore it could change. You might now wish to be the Apple CEO, but who knows, next time you might want to be President of the United States. As you can see, that could change in time, and when you get asked these questions 2 years from now, you might not know what your dream job was 2 or 3 years ago. So always choose something that's in the past and is unlikely to change. Let's say Robin Hood. And in which did your parents meet? Well, let's say something romantic like Paris. Not true, but still. And then you want to unsubscribe from all of these and find a code that you can actually read without too much difficulty. Get it right the first time. Let's try that one. And okay, no, that's going to send an email off to verify. Once you've verified and got your Apple ID, then you can sign in. I've already created one. Now, if you get this Apple Connect error, do not worry. Go back to the developer.apple page, go to account, and it will just say that you're pending. That's it there. You click on Discover, and so the URL is developer.apple.com/discover. Click on Program, and you can read all about the Apple Developer Program, but click on Enroll. Now you have a choice here. You can enroll as an individual or you can enroll as an organization. I would strongly suggest that initially you enroll as an individual. If you do post anything to the App Store, it will be in your name rather than an organization's name. But as it says here, you need to get a DUNS number in order to enroll an organisation, and that's timely and confusing and difficult if you're in Australia because we don't use DUNS numbers, and you need to apply to the Dun & Bradstreet overseas in order to have it all happening. So we'll enroll as an individual. Here in Australia it's $149, but it's about $100 US everywhere else in the world. Gives you this little enrollment ID, which will become your developer ID. You check the box and you go purchase. You need to sign in. And then you fill in the various payment details, or if you're lucky enough to have an Apple Store gift card, you can use that. And you continue again. You go place the order now, and you'll end up with an Apple ID and various emails, etc., etc., etc. The subscription lasts for 1 year, and if you clicked on renew every year, it will try and hitch your credit card up every year. So once you've got your developer ID, you can go back to the developer website. And over here at account, you can click on account. And I'm going to sign out. And I'm going to log in with my developer ID. Dear me. And once you've successfully got your account, it will turn up here with all the access levels you need, certificates, identifiers, and profiles, which are what you need to use Xcode and upload apps to the App Store. And iTunes Connect is the, it says here, publish and manage your apps on the App Store with iTunes Connect. So that's it for creating an Apple ID, and in the next tutorial we'll be installing Xcode. So let's have a look at that. See you soon. Okay, so now we have our developer account. We're ready to install the Xcode compiler, or the Integrated Development Environment, or IDE for short. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's free. Comment below or hit me up on Twitter @SwiftAlmanac if you have any questions. Look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial when we install Xcode. Cheers.